your political bias will make you fail in Venezuela? Today we discuss.
Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com.
If you have a political bias, and by the way, I'm not criticizing anyone that has a political bias. You could be left-leaning, right-leaning, libertarian, also this conservative right-winger, or whatever might be the case, and that's up to you. However, when you put in practice anything with a political bias, most likely you will fail. And here's why. Politicians, regardless if they are left, of their right or center or whatever might be the case, they only serve their particular interests. Usually the people that are backing their particular political operations, their donors, their sponsors, or if they are in power, the people that keep in power these particular operations. If you're an investor or whatever is your particular occupation, unless you serve politicians, in that particular case, just you do you in your particular, you're pretty much fine. Well, what happens is that it's gonna cloud your judgment in order to put investing. I mean, basically, everyone is an investor because you have to invest your time, your money, and your energy. So when you have political bias and you are working in your particular field or in your particular activity, you are involved in politics on your everyday operations, you are gonna fail. Here's why. Because when you have a political bias, you cannot see clearly what is actually going on in each particular situation. And I'm going to use the example of Mexico. I mean, just an example that I have, in the back of my head the past few years. And the last president and the current president right now is Andrés Manuel López Obrador, AMLO, as he's colloquially known. Okay, he is a left-leaning president that has left-leaning views of the world and his statements, and actually he's friends mostly with left-leaning politicians in Latin America. However, when he has to take care of businesses, and by the way, I'm not a fan of AMLO or anything like that. I'm not saying this. Please keep that in mind. Actually, when it's the nitty-gritty of businesses, first regarding NAFTA, that has another name. And in case you don't know, NAFTA is this particular trade agreement between Mexico, the US, and Canada that has been very beneficious on the grand scheme of things, and it's positive for all of these economies. And the people who say otherwise is usually using a political bias. First thing. By the way. The second thing, he's the neighbor. Mexico is the neighbor of the largest economy in the world, by far the United States. That is basically 25% of the worldwide GDP. Very good. So he needs a good relationship with the United States, regardless if he's left or right. He has been able to establish relationship with both Democrats and Republicans. He actually had a very good relationship with President Trump back then, that he's a Democrat, right-wing, and also a decent relationship with Biden and the Democrats. They are quote-unquote center-left, that kind of thing. But also they have the progressive, but I'm not going to get to discuss. Also a decent relationship with Justin Trudeau, that I know most of you watching this content, you are not a big fan. You guys are not big fans of Justin Trudeau, but has a decent relationship indeed as well. Also, during COVID, he was more pragmatic regarding the situation of COVID with the lockdowns and that kind of stuff. He kept the economy open, of course, with the restrictions that you needed the tests and the social distancing and that kind of stuff. But Mexico was actually one of the freer countries in the world that regarding mobility and that kind of stuff, that helped Mexico, a juggernaut regarding international tourism, in order to keep in place, don't suffer as much regarding, of course, the tourism revenue, and that helped a lot the Mexican economy. And also right now, since a lot of the feuds, the political feuds between the United States and China, of course, the second largest economy in the world regarding GDP, and they have a very big, they are a juggernaut regarding manufacturing, industrials, and so on. And probably the most important country regarding manufacturing, that kind of stuff, the factory of the world, you want to call it like that. But with all of the political views with China and the US from both sides, I'm not arguing either pro or against both sides of the aisle regarding the US and China. And regardless if in the US is a Democrat or a Republican, well, and also issues with the Chinese economy as well. What they're doing right now, we are seeing this concept of near-shoring. That is basically, instead of extending your supply chain, keeping it close to home in order to avoid some supply chain disruptions like we saw during COVID. Very good. So since Mexico is right now, of course, has a very good relationship regarding economics, the Mexican authorities are trustworthy. Many companies, instead of investing in China or very remote places in the world, let's say in Asia or Europe, they are going to Mexico. And many countries are all over the world, and many investing is going to Mexico, since that you are a neighboring country with the United States, and also you have the NAFTA agreement, and also a very good diplomatic relationship with the United States. Right now, Mexico is poised to harness this particular industrial production in order to export to the rest of the world, especially with the United States. So it's a net positive, it's a big win for the Mexican economy that right now, regarding industrial and manufacturing, I have to look for the particular graph and the particular data, but Mexico has surpassed China as an industrial supplier, is just on that particular level for the United States. And also, if you are a right-wing libertarian, you have this particular bias. Many of these people that are quote-unquote right-wing politicians are not necessarily better than the left-leaning ones. I'm seeing many disgraces. Well, my history, for instance, I mentioned Mauricio Macri in Argentina. He is a quote-unquote right-wing politician compared to the Peronistas in Argentina. They are left-leaning, and by the way, they are terrible politicians, the Peronists, that kind of stuff. You don't want to deal with a Peronista, by the way, for experience. Trust me, I'm living in Argentina. But the issue with Macri is that, okay, in his speech, it was a right-wing speech, center-right, that kind of stuff. But his policies, his economic policies, were left-leaning, similar to the Peronistas. Price controls, capital controls, corporatism, corruption during the public institutions, and that kind of stuff. So de facto, this particular candidate, this particular president, Mauricio Macri, he is another left-leaning guy and talking socialism and that kind of stuff. Now, regarding Venezuela, of course, this is our country, that topic of discussion. And of course, the first thing I can say is don't involve in politics, because you have nothing to gain on that particular battlefield. Anyways, depending on what you're doing, what is your plan in Venezuela, could be living, could be investing, could be visiting for long periods of time. The first thing that I have to say is put politics aside for your own mental health. And that also goes for my fellow Venezuelans, but my fellow Venezuelans already know this. That's the first thing. The second thing, what is happening on the political sphere is not what is happening on real terms in the country. I'm not going to get into the politics and that kind of stuff and the socialism and that kind of stuff. Okay. Whatever you're doing here in the country, you have to, everything, take it with a grain of salt. First, the information that you're getting from the West is terrible, it's outdated, it has a lot of bias. That's the first thing. The second thing, the migration, a bunch of the issues that we do have in the country, that those happen a lot, but right now there is a lot of needs. We don't have hyperinflation, by the way. We don't have capital or currency controls, by the way. We don't have scarcity, by the way. So, and so on and so on and so on. So you have to take that into account. You are getting a lot of outdated information. The government is the government. I'm not going to discuss what the government is. It's a very draconian, wacky thing. And I'm not into politics. It's why. But what is happening really on the country, that Venezuela is a beautiful country, that you have to check it for yourself. Regarding investing, it's not that you're gonna come and you're gonna become rich easily, or it's gonna easy get rich quick scheme, or a lazy investing thing like investing in a Vanguard ETF. But there is value in the country. That's why if you have any remote interest in the country and you can afford to travel to Venezuela, do so. Take certain precautions, and you are gonna be fine. And reach certain conclusions for yourself, not for the Western media or all of the noise that you get on the news and the political side. And lastly, regarding what you are getting from my fellow Venezuelans. Okay, let's discuss a little bit the political bias of my fellow Venezuelans. That I'm not saying they are mistaken or anything, but most Venezuelans actually. What happens with the average Venezuelan is this significant drop of the standards of living here in the country, that of course the government has a great deal of responsibility on that particular regard, and there are a lot of issues that used to happen in the past that are not happening right now, and many Venezuelans have several years living abroad, let's say in the United States, if you're watching this from the US. Very good. Is that they have particular bias depending on their particular personal situation. The biggest issue of Venezuela is that creating wealth from scratch is next to impossible, so that's why they migrated. They might not because they're looking for democratic freedom or any that kind of stuff. They are just looking to increase their standards of living, and very good for them. Totally deserve that. However, well, it's way more difficult that they expected on the right now the receiving country. Anyways, but they have a bias against the government, and that's completely reasonable. And also, according to a recent poll, 87% of Venezuelans hate socialism. But regardless if they hate socialism or not, what happens in practice is a weird mix between both socialism, I have to say, and capitalism. I'm talking in practice, in real life, in real terms. But regardless, if you're capitalistic, socialist, whatever may be the case, your success in life is going to depend on your skills, your hard work, your experience, your knowledge, your know-how, and so on and so on. And that's why you have to make a very pragmatic analysis regarding what you want to accomplish here in the country. Also, I get a lot of information of internationals, especially Western internationals, that they get bad information from my fellow Venezuelans that they are living abroad. Most of them have several years living abroad. And that happens, and I'm not blaming my fellow Venezuelans for this, because I understand they have a certain spite against their own home country because their particular country failed them in order to create, wealth and prosperity. So they have to go abroad. Most of them are not creating wealth and prosperity abroad as well, because it's very difficult. They are barely making ends meet, most of them, not all of them. So they have this particular negative situation against our home country, and that's why they give you terror information. But in practice, it's not the case. In most cases, depending on the particular case. So that's why it's very important to have critical analysis, a very pragmatic analysis of the information. Now, what I can say, this is just my bias, is that Venezuela is a beautiful country, love my country, a lot of issues. Indeed, most of the issues that we had 6-7 years ago when we hit rock bottom have been solved regarding supply chain, that kind of stuff. It's still hard to make ends meet in the country. I have to explain that. That Venezuela, I honestly am bullish for Venezuela on the next 5 to 10 years. There are a lot of opportunities, also a lot of risk, a lot of frictions involved. That's no different. But you have to make your risk analysis for yourself. And in order to reach conclusions, those conclusions must be pragmatic, not based on political bias, regardless if you're on the left, right, center, libertarian, whatever might be the case.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again and have a nice day.